Excellent point. You need to abide by your company's information controls and security policy. But if your company doesn't allow generative AI of any kind in 2024, they are behind the curve, and you should be an internal advocate to change and revise that policy. In this video, I'll give you a few tips to help you convince leadership to craft a secure generative AI policy. Your leadership will be wondering, why should we do this? The answer is that research shows that for more than 90% of developers, developer productivity, retention, and job satisfaction are significantly improved with a well-formed generative AI policy and the right tools, including GitHub Copilot and GPT-4. For an example of this research, you can see the 2022-09-07 blog article from GitHub. These benefits disproportionately accrue to juniors, accelerating onboarding and facilitating diverse groups of employees from alternative backgrounds, leading to additional knock-on benefits to innovation from diversity. Now that the value prop is clear, how do we make sure that we're doing these things safely? One thing you can consider is buying the enterprise version of GitHub Copilot and or GPT-4. There are secure enterprise versions available today. Tons of awesome features, like you can do chat thread sharing internal to the company. Love it. There are also like custom GPT integrations for Confluence and more. These companies are also friendly to pilot provision. So if you don't want to go all in just yet, you can reach out to their sales team and negotiate a pilot program that will have discounted or sometimes even free, you didn't hear it from me, rates for a limited number of seats. What if you don't want the enterprise version? You just full stop, no, you don't want enterprise. That's okay. You can allow your employees to get their own premium chat GPT, for example. $20 a month, you can choose to reimburse them or not. And here's the security controls you put in place if you're going that way. You ban PII and secrets. Even if you're using the enterprise version, you should probably ban PII. Ban PII and secrets in ChatGPT, and provide best practices, including obfuscation and generification. These are going to be your key tools to allow your employees to get benefits from these tools without compromising security. In addition, you should have a blanket security policy for using websites like GitHub, the public GitHub, when employees are filing issues, adding comments, and Stack Overflow when employees are adding comments, providing answers, asking questions. You want to empower your employees to do this, but you should have a policy in place regardless of generative AI to control the posting of information. This will also relate to your social media guidelines. You might have social media or public release media guidelines. These can all be drawn upon to craft your generative AI policy. What is generification? Let's say that in my company, I have a special service that does a bunch of special things, and it amounts to basically a company secret. And this service might have a name. It might be called Super Service. So everyone in your company knows what the Super Service is. Outside the company, they don't. To generify a question means to provide the minimal relevant information. Developers are familiar with the concept of a minimal reproducible example, or a repro, when they're trying to get open source maintainers to help them assist the issue. Similar principles apply. You can provide the minimal relevant context relevant to super service and then swap out the name for its generic form. So if super service is a fast API microservice, the engineer should prompt about a fast API microservice. Use the generic form of the tool name. What if there is no generic form? This is one way that obfuscation comes into place. The second way that the obfuscation comes in is just by clipping irrelevant information, which is going to be beneficial from a prompting perspective anyway. You don't want to provide irrelevant context to GPT. With obfuscation, if there is relevant information and it doesn't have a generic form name, you can create an alias. You can create a different name. Super service, I might name it John Doe service. In the ChatGPT context, I can say, let's say I have a service called John Doe service, and I can proceed to describe it to the LLM, and it will be retained in memory like a variable. So it will gain an understanding of the specification of that service in a non-generic form, but in an obfuscated form that can't be linked back to your company internals. Given these tips, you should be able to provide a secure generative AI policy. Some optional things you can also include are a Chrome plugin internal to your company that masks certain strings sort of automatically while you're on the GPT website. Let's say it automatically masks social security numbers, for example, so that if the developer accidentally pastes it in there, it just gets overwritten by the Chrome plugin. Another thing you can do is provide best practices, recommended practices in your company. If you don't have experts within the company, there's plenty of online external resources about effective prompt engineering, not just for security, but just for effectiveness. And then the other piece of this policy is that developers will always be responsible for the code they submit for pull request and for the actions they take on production systems. So no one is to trust the output of GPT blindly, right? And this is, again, not necessarily part of your security policy. You can put it in there, but this is just like standard prompt engineering. The engineer should review the output of the LLM tool and own the use of that output. So you can include that in your policy if you want, but it should definitely be part of the best practices. Hope this helped. If you found it interesting, hit like, follow for more. See you soon.